except for winning the lottery and the #1 overall pick in the 2024 draft, this has been a pretty dull offseason for the Guardians. You could say it hasn't been lively until now.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Listen, you can say a lot of things about the Guardians, an unlively offseason leading to terrible punnage. I'm half tempted to walk out of this podcast right now, but the one thing you can't say is they don't get their man. Ben Lively, one of those players that I kind of liked, like Central Florida, before he went to the Reds. Before we get into this too much, I'll stop and do what I'm supposed to do, which is say thank you for joining us on Locked On Guardians. Your first. We have you covered every day, your team every day, and thank you for making us your, or 3 days a week in the off season. Hey, we need a break sometimes. And also to say, thank you for joining us, your first listen of the day. You know what? I didn't do comments today. We were so busy talking about Ben Lively. I guess he is lively because I forgot
to lively discussion.
I don't have an everydayer because I didn't do a single comment yet from the show, but like I said, to get back into it, 2010 draft class, they drafted him in the 26th round. By the way, 4th highest WAR of any player taken in that class, didn't sign. Highest WAR, Drew Pomeranz, who they at least traded for some value. Jimenez, who then left and got him Sheffield, who they then traded for Miller. So, hey, that worked out. Number 2, Cody Allen, and you can't give him credit there. I really, and I distinctly remember this because I remember asking our good friend Tony Lastoria, I'm like, I liked that Allen guy. Do you hear anything? And Tony, as all news reporters have, his source was an agent, and he goes, yeah, apparently the Indians just kind of stopped talking to them, and it was the Indians at the time. They would come back the next year and draft Cody Allen, so I don't think he really counts in this class since they didn't sign him and took another year to officially get him. Tony Wolters, who I believe they just cut before he ended up in Colorado, and then Ben Lively at 4, and Andrew Triggs, who they also didn't sign. And then the other guys to make the big leagues, Justin Haley didn't sign, Taylor Hill didn't sign, Brock Stassi didn't sign, David Goforth didn't sign, Bobby Wall didn't sign, Birch Smith didn't sign, Tyler Holt did sign, but I think he's the only one who really played in the big leagues with this team from the guys who signed. That was a particularly terrible draft year. Gave a lot of money to Alex Levinsky, the last local kid. Gave a lot of money to Levon Washington, who I believe had bones made of cardboard. And what I distinctly remember about this draft class was having no idea who Nick Bartolone was, not being able to find any information. The first ghost in the history of the draft. I'm still not convinced he ever existed. He never made it up to AA, I want to say, so I never actually got to see that dude. Yeah, he never got to AA. So in my mind, he didn't exist. I think that was a fake pick. There was a senior sign, even though there were no senior signs then. I don't think that individual actually existed.
He did. Because you know what? I covered the captain's teams he was on. I can confirm he existed, and I can confirm they might have been better off just not picking a player at that round.
It was a weird draft. This was back when they were kind of terrible at drafts. This was, we recently talked about the Barnesby era and the Grant era. This was the end of the era. And it was not something you want to write home about. Overall, it was a disappointing class, but I bring this up because it is the humor that the draft in 2010, 13 years later, he's signing in Cleveland, and hey, 10,000 more than the minimum, so they can stash him in AAA to start the year and a lot of people got mad about this, and my general view is that's what's going to happen. I don't think he makes this team. His role is to be a depth arm. I could be wrong. Maybe he makes the team. He started 12 games a year ago, was not very good, 88 innings for the Reds. He was worth half a win. He's been kind of that guy. He went to the KBO for a while. He's with Kansas City, Arizona, Philadelphia, Cincinnati for multiple runs. And he's been a depth arm. I think the fact that he has an option year left made him valuable, and it gives them someone else to throw out there until they're sure maybe Cantillo can fill in, until they feel that, maybe they're hoping one of these young arms is going to establish themselves. Maybe Leftwich will bounce back. Maybe someone else is going to move in and show they're ready. Because, listen, Gaddis is a 6th, 7th guy. Curry is kind of your emergency 5th, like he was this past year. this gives them that depth that, for people who got mad at me a month ago in the comments of the show, I was like, what about all those guys you talked about this year for depth? They didn't. Is this great depth? No, but it's proven depth. He does not walk guys. He does not get hard. He gives a team a chance. Is it a great chance? No, but he's not going to get you into trouble. The most valuable thing about him is the fact he has an option left, I think.
Yeah, he comes cheap. He's got an option left, and he does have a little experience. I mean, there are some intriguing things to look at here. The first thing, if you look at, is 13. He allowed 53 runs, 83 innings last year. He allowed 13 runs in 4 innings against the Cubs. So I'm not saying that didn't count, but if you take that out, the numbers are a little bit different. And yeah, he doesn't strike guys out, so that's going to be an issue. But he does avoid hard contact to a decent degree. He avoids walks, so he doesn't get himself in trouble in that regard. And if you look at some of the data on his pitches, the slider and sinker both have good numbers. He generally avoids hard contact and produces positive run values in the sliders and the sinker. So the upside to play here is, like you said, it's depth. It's, he's got the option. He's not making so much money that he have to commit him to a rotation spot. And I'm sure they told him in signing him that, hey, we're not, we have a rotation like we like right now, so you're not guaranteed a starting spot. You can compete for one in spring training and see what happens, but he might go to Columbus, and that's fine. They're
going to want to keep him stretched out. That's why I think he starts the year in Columbus, barring a trade.
Yeah.
They're going to want to keep him stretched out.
Rather, like you said, you'd rather be able to call him up if you have a doubleheader after a rain out, or some guy that needs to miss 2 weeks because he's got an ankle sprain or something, especially early in the season when all your minor leaguers like Cantillo and Gaddis and whoever else that might emerge as depth are getting their feet out of them for the season. Lively is a little older, a little more experienced, and is he a guy that you really want to make 12, 20 starts? No, you don't want that. Obviously, that's not why he's here. He's here because you're hoping he can make 8 or 9 starts throughout the major league season, maybe 10 starts. Not a guy you want to pitch like April through June or July, or July through the end of the season. Unless something really changes, you don't want him being a regular starter. But if he makes 10 or 12 starts for you throughout the year from April to September, because he's filling in for a minor injury or a doubleheader recall to start one of the games, that's fine. Last year, positive run value for slider 5 and 3 for a sinker. So anything positive is good, anything negative is bad. Four-seam fastball, negative 11, very bad. So his four-seam fastball is god awful. He shouldn't throw it. He threw that the most out of any pitch last year. I have a feeling Cleveland's going to say, you're not going to throw this as your main pitch anymore. You're going to start throwing more sinkers. You're going to start throwing more sliders. Or they help him change the shape of the fastball. I don't know if the shape is bad, but he tops out at 91, so that's not really going to be fixed problem. Unless they have bad velocity.
Yeah, I think
if you change the pitch mix a little bit, he has missed bats. Like he has a decent whiff rate with the slider and not so much the sinker, but he gets the ball on the ground and guys don't hit it hard like they normally do. So if you change the arsenal a little bit and you add a little bit of velocity, because Cleveland's been known to do that, and you just generally hide him. Even if you hide him from good left-handed hitters, like look at his numbers for between lefties and righties.
His home and away too should be pointed out, because we know how bad he is. His away FIP is 448. That's solid. Like I'll take a pitcher for 448. What's his home FIP? 6.
It's bad.
He was really bad at home. It is 88 innings, but his 448 FIP, that's good. That's something to look at there. I mean, he had almost over 2.3 home runs per 9 at home and 1.3 on the road. Again, Cincinnati. So there are things, and after our hedges talk, I know people are gonna look in our looking in the comments there and be like, oh, you're finding ways to make this seem better than it is.
We're just trying to explain the angle.
But why does everything have to be this team stinks? This team's awful. Why can't it just be like, okay, they added a guy? It's not like, why can we not have any nice things? Like, why? And again, is Ben Lively a nice thing? No, nothing world breaking. I get that, but like, I don't understand the constant negativity is draining. But they're even going back to when they won the draft pick. Everything is just this immediate negative response.
Yeah, everything trickles down from
instead
all
of just looking at it as like, oh, they added a guy who has interesting pieces and parts. You know, they needed depth. They added depth.
Yeah, we're not sitting here saying it's great depth. Like, wow, if something happens, like let's say, you know, Gavin Williams goes on the injured list for a month because he's got a sprained finger. Like, we're not saying that, you know, it'd be great if Ben Lively's a great option to fill in for Gavin Williams, because he's not. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, again, like I pointed out, if you need a guy for a doubleheader on short notice, if you have, you know, Logan Allen sprained his ankle and he's going to miss 2 starts, that's, you know, Ben Lively is someone you can live with for 2 starts. It's not ideal to give him 20, obviously, unless, like I said, unless something changes, unless they can make major changes to the arsenal, which I don't know how major of a change you can make to a 31-year-old after all this time. He was not good last year. Let's be honest. He was not good. But we're looking at the little pieces, parts here of the profile to see, okay, what is it that Cleveland thinks makes him an interesting option for them? Like, no one's saying he's going to go out and win the Cy Young. He's not even going to be in an ideal world, he's not in your rotation regularly. We're just trying to find the little pieces here to try to figure out, okay, what is Cleveland's angle to this? Why are they signing him to this deal? And that's it. And final thought on Ben Lively, because we didn't need to spend all this time on a guy who you hope is making more starts for your AAA team than your Major League team. I don't think it makes a Shane Bieber trade any more imminent than it did.
This doesn't change anything. He's the 6th.
They needed this no matter what.
I mean, honestly, he's probably their 7th starter. I think Curry transitioning is more likely their 6th right now. So he is probably their 7th guy in line. So I'm not.
Yeah, we'll see.
Company.
Still a lot of off season to go. It's only December 13th. We are not quite ready to get starting pitchers yet in terms of our 2023 positional review. But in the interest of time, we're doing third base today because this is the easiest and the shortest positional review of 2023 we have to do, because only really only 2 guys to talk about, really. One of those guys is the franchise player of Cleveland, and the other guy, he wasn't protected from the Rule 5 draft this year, and we're not really sure what his future holds, but that's about it for Cleveland. So we're going to talk about third baseman here in just a moment. Well, before we talk about third baseman, hey, going into next year, I'm just saying, Shohei Ohtani is out of the AL. José Ramírez's MVP chances, maybe they go up a little bit. So maybe you check those odds on FanDuel and you say, all right, I'm going to throw some money down on José Ramírez because he may not win it. He may be past his prime. We're going to talk about that. But there's one less roadblock in his way to win than MVP. So check those FanDuel odds. Before you do that, check out FanDuel if you're a new customer, because you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So that's $150 if your team wins. All you got to do is place a $5 moneyline bet if you're a new customer, and if you win, you get $150 to spend at FanDuel. So if you've been thinking about joining and you haven't yet, good time to get on the action. And hey, if you're not really a fan of money lines, I'm not really a big money line bettor myself. I like the spreads. I like player props. I like those a lot more. You have all those options available to you on FanDuel, as well as over-unders and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown today and get in on the action this NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, Jeff, third base. I know
before we dive into that real quickly, can I call an audible? Should we at least comment very quickly, going through the comments about how people are kind of anti-Austin Hedges? Should we talk about that quote from Andre?
Oh, that's a good point. So our good friend of the show, former guest of the show, you can go back and listen to that episode from last spring. Andre Knott did a Hall of Fame Akron. He was a speaker at an event in Akron for a Hall of Fame luncheon, and he was there the day that the Austin Hedges news came through, and he got a bunch of texts from, I think, 4 players. He said this isn't an Akron Beacon Journal news article on Andre doing the event. It wasn't really about the Guardians; it was about his job. But anyway, he said he got 4 texts the day that the Guardians re-signed Hedges, and it was 4 players, and 4 players were saying how glad they were to have him back. So that just tells you that there are people on this team that think there's value there. Is it worth $4 million of value? I don't know.
We don't know. But for all of those articles at the end of the year, like Zach and people like that we trust talk about how there was a leadership gap, it is clear that people and teammates wanted him back. So again, what are you going to spend $4 million on anyways? It's not going to buy you anything else other than a backup catcher, really, or Rowdy Tellez. And no, thank you. I'd rather have a guy who does one thing well, and that's, I know defense is declining, but he handles the pitching staff as well as anyone. So that's just thought we should talk about that before we talk third base.
That's a good point. Very quickly, too, I didn't want to spend more time on Ben Lively, but we've got some conflicting information here. So FanGraphs has Ben Lively with one option left. The Guardians' official release of the roster after his signing, because by the way, they have confirmed the Ben Lively signing, so he is on the 40-man roster. Yeah. They have not confirmed Austin Hedges. So whenever they do announce the Austin Hedges move, another roster move has to be made. So they opened up a spot by trading Christian Bethancourt, and that spot has gone to Ben Lively. So they got to make one more when they make the Hedges signing official. But the release by the team says that Ben Lively does not have an option for next year. So I don't know if FanGraphs made an error or if the team made an error on their roster release, but someone's not right here. So if he doesn't have an option, that does change things a little bit based on what we talked about.
I see multiple other places saying he has an option outside of that. So it's
I'm just saying the team release,
which is normally very good, but
I guess we'll look to confirm that over the next couple of days and find out. So if he doesn't have an option, that definitely changes things a little bit, makes things a little more hairy. But anyway, we said we're going to talk about
he was also, he was also a guy who pitched out of the pen and as a starter. He was it doesn't mean anything about Bieber, but it could mean a potential shifting of Curry again, because he might be moving into that Curry role of long guy, potential starter. So there is just that. They're trading Curry. You heard it here by the end of the night.
Yeah, there you go. By the end of the night.
To the let me go alphabetically through all 29 other teams, and then you'll have heard it here first.
Oh, great. We only have 15 more minutes, Jeff. Jeez. Anyway, José Ramírez. So we're reviewing third base in 2023. Obviously, the franchise player of all franchise players, José Ramírez, kind of a down year in the grand scheme of things. There were good months in there for José Ramírez, but the second half was pretty rough for him in terms of power numbers. He had 1 month this year where the power was really good, and that was June. So in June,
he had that stretch.
He had
like
a 630
stretch ever, right?
Yeah, June. So June he had a 1,030 OPS. He slugged 630, 176 WRC plus. His best slugging percentage after July or June 630 was 476 in July. That's kind of down for Jose. Again, Jose is still one of the best players, one of the top, 10 players in baseball. I don't know where he's at these days, truthfully, but he's still obviously one of the best players out there. There's a lot of teams that would love to have him, as much as John Morosi loves to try to trade him. But it was an up and down year for him. The month that Josh Naylor missed in August, 674 OPS from Jose. He walked more than he struck out. Teams were just trying to pitch around him. He had a 73 WRC plus. It was a bad month. There were a couple average months in there. So, he is 31 now. He will play all next season at 31 until like the last 2 weeks. We'll see. But, even though it was a down year, I will say there were still not a lot of signs where I'm like concerned yet. So the strikeout rate is still very low. It was low. It's the lowest it's been since 2016 when he, obviously broke out. The walk rate was better than it was a year ago. It's still one of his better walk rates. He's still not swinging and missing a lot. So when those things start to corrode a little bit, I'll start to get concerned. But he had a 5.1 wins above replacement per FanGraphs last year and a 123 WRC plus for the season. I think you could still think there's going to be 4 or 5 more of those kind of seasons ahead for him. I just don't know if he's going to pick how far he's going to be able to pick it back up from there.
So where I would argue that you do see the signs of decline is, 2022 is hurt, so you get rid of it. But if you look at 21 and 23 is how much his chase rate. He is chasing, at a significantly higher percentage, and he's barreling at a significantly lower percentage. So he's chasing bad pitches, even though he's not striking out. It means that his quality of contact isn't as high as it used to be because of that, and that he's not getting the good part of the barrel on the bat, which is also part of chasing. So I don't know if it's over adjustment. I mean, I think anyone watching him saw him chase a lot more over these last 2 years. So that's where I get worried, especially because guys who are really big and guys who are really small tend to age poorly. Like Aaron Judges and José Ramírez, those guys age poorly. That is one of those things where you often don't want to give those guys contract twos. We'll see how Cleveland and New York handle it. But historically, those two ends of the spectrum don't age as well. I'm not saying he's done. I'm not saying that. I think he's a good player. I think his days of being a top 5 MVP candidate are done. I do think that is there. And I think we're going to see a slow and steady beginning of decline for him, where by the end of that contract, that last year might be ugly. That's kind of my view, just because we did see points where he couldn't just not seem to put it all together, and where, he even last year, he was so good before he hurt his finger. He had a 141 weighted runs created plus, 140 before that, 167 before that. 2019 was a down year, 147, 146. This year is 123. Like, again, that's great, but it's not that MVP caliber. And I don't think we're getting back to that MVP calendar for a player who is, entering his 30s.
Yeah, I would say that chase rate is always a concern. When guys start to chase more, you start to get concerned, because that is kind of the first sign.
Yeah.
And you're right. The chase rate the last 2 years has been up over his career. So there is that. And chase rate contact is also down there.
Yes.
But, he's still making enough contact at this point. He still makes it. He's not swinging and missing in the zone, which is, what you would be concerned about. Like his zone contact this year was as high as it's ever been. So that's still a good sign. So the problem is teams are just not giving him pitches to hit in the zone. Let's be honest. Pitchers are trying to give him less to hit because the lineup is not good. So there's no reason to pitch to José Ramírez.
And they also know that they can give him chase more. Like, they don't have to throw him quite as much in the zone. Possibly. Because, it's that as well. Because I don't know how, over the years, I think we've seen through statistical studies that, like, the whole idea of protection in a lineup just isn't true. Like, pitchers are going to throw at hitters. And, they typically, if you are a major league pitcher, you have to be confident enough in your stuff to not worry about who's on the mound outside of knowing tendency data. So I think, like I said, I think we're seeing signs that he has begun to decline. He has declined from a top 10 player to, the next tier down of very good. We'll see what happens. But, I also think the 24 home runs this year were a bit of a concern. And, that month of August was ugly. He was, it was ugly for everyone, but listen, he's going to retire. It's all said and done. You can go back, not on YouTube, if you want to go listen to the podcast audibly, if you've only discovered it. I did the Guardians all-time great series and went position by position by position. Third base, you had Al Rosen, and I think Bill Bradley was the guy who had the highest WAR. Jose is going to be the greatest third baseman all time when he retires. But I think we can also admit this is probably starting to walk down from peak. Not run down, not fall down, but just a walk down from peak value.
Right. I think he's got maybe a year or two left in there where he can raise the level one more time. But, yeah, I think for sure it's going to be a gradual step. And my solution, I've said before, get the guy more rest. I know he doesn't like to rest. I say get the guy more rest.
Yes.
Let's get the best out of him the next couple of years.
And they have to tell him that he has to accept it. Like when he broke his thumb, okay, it's fine if he didn't want to get surgery, but it was crazy that like he played hitting the home run derby. It's crazy that like it didn't make him take more rest that year. At some point, you are paying him. Listen, he is underpaid, but they're still paying him a lot of money, and you have to be like, no, dude, you're in your 30s. Sometimes you got to take a few off days.
Yeah, get the best out of him. The problem with that is the options behind José Ramírez aren't great.
We got Nolan Jones, right? The heir apparent. Oh,
well, he's not even the heir apparent in Colorado to know whether or not. But we'll talk about some other guys that could play third base here in just a moment. If you thought José Ramírez's year was a step down offensively, you're not going to love the discussion about third base prospects in the system from last year, because essentially the discussion about third base prospects in the Guardians minor league system is Dayan Frias and 17-year-olds in the Dominican.
I guess it depends how you feel about Cooper Ingle. Like if he can't stick at catcher, is there a chance he could play some third, or is he an outfielder? CJ Kafis, didn't he played a little third in college? I don't think there's any real chance of going back there.
Isn't he a left-handed thrower? Doesn't he throw left-handed?
Oh, I thought you're right. He
throws left-handed. There's no way he played third base in college.
I thought he played left, or I thought I saw him, but
he played left. But yeah, no.
Yes, no, left, not third. My fault.
It's literally Dayan Frias.
Yeah,
and I think a year ago, coming off of 2022, we would have said, "Oh, is Gabriel Rodriguez the guy that could jump into the fray?" And because look, Gabriel Rodriguez, I watched him at age 20 at high A. Yeah. He was solid. He just didn't follow up on that at age 21 at double A. He was miserably bad and solid defender. But I just don't see a path for him forward prospect wise. I was hoping he would follow up on that solid 2022, but he certainly has not.
Much like Nate Furman.
Yeah, I mean, Nate Furman is a guy who could play some third base. I think he fits better as a second baseman.
Yeah.
Especially considering that the profile of the bat fits second base better than third base. But, I mean, we've talked a little bit about Dayan Frias in the past. I will say, for my money, in the Guardians minor league system this year, for all the guys I saw play in the field, Dayan Frias was my top glove at any position. There was not even a shortstop in the minor league system I thought was better defensively than him. Dayan Frias has the best glove in the minors on the infield to me. I don't know if he can play shortstop, and I didn't see him enough there, but my reasoning here is, A, I didn't see him a whole lot there. B, because Cleveland prioritized Milan Tolentino and Yordis Valdez and some other guys at shortstop, and Cleo Watson when he got to Lake County. They prioritized other guys at shortstop over Dayan Frias. That tells me they think that he is not better than them, unless they're just saying he's so good at shortstop that he doesn't need the reps, which I doubt is true at his age. So if Cleveland's thinking that, there are other guys better than him that need those reps at third, then because Cleveland is all about diversifying all their players at different positions, right? Frias only played 7 games at shortstop last year. To me, that says that he isn't their best option in the minors, but that isn't to say he's not a great defender. Like I said, at third base, he was fantastic last year. He's got a great arm. He's got range. He's slick. I think he can also handle second base. I wouldn't be surprised if he could handle the outfield as well. He's an interesting prospect, and I'm glad he didn't get taken on the Rule 5 for Cleveland's sake, because he did start to discover some pull side power from the left side at the very least. The right side needs some work, I feel like, but it's so hard to trust anybody's strikeouts and walk rates at high A. I'll be curious to see how he fares at double A next year, but there's something interesting there. There needs to be somebody, because there really isn't anybody else.
And I think part of it with Frias is just they know that he is a utility guy, so they kind of had him bounce around a bit. They know it's his future. I mean, Christian Cairo had a few games at third base, enough to get him listed there. 29 games this year, which is relative to all things. He had what is that? He only
had
30
utility upside too.
Yeah,
though, so.
But it's like at least that's a name. Alex Mooney, they already have moving into that role. So I would just keep an eye on him for next year. And I mean, I'll be curious to see what happens with Welbin. There are a lot of people who are super, super high on him. Listen, we don't know. Like, it's all scouting reports of him playing against other super young players. It is impossible to really put a good judgment on a player at this point in time from that level. I know he's a shortstop, but again, at this point,
you're watching in person every day.
Yeah, it's hard to measure, and that's kind of where we are with it. At the major league level, it's maybe David Fry, who we saw, Freeman occasionally. It's Arias sometimes. It's gonna depend what happens at that shortstop position. Rocchio had 1 game with the bad throw to Calhoun. Yeah. I know there's more after that, but that's what we're kind of seeing. And again, like, I teased about Nolan Jones. They don't need a third baseman. And as much as I am, I know people are going to be like, you're so negative on Jose. I just see a decline. That's all. I'm saying he's still great. It's a step. He is walking slowly down that hill, but they don't need a third baseman. They're not going to need a third baseman anytime soon, barring injury. not
there's
having
an injury,
the depth there in the minors
matters because there's nobody.
They're done. You can't replace Jose. So if he gets hurt, you're done anyways. So I don't know. This is the position you want to have a black hole at. This is the position that is the best position to be weak at because you don't need to have a replacement anytime soon. If you have a hole there due to injury, you're done anyways. So yeah, I'm of the position of all the places we'll talk about. This is the one place where it makes a little bit of sense
not to focus on. Yeah. I mean, depending on who wins shortstop, we'll talk about the shortstop battle. Shortstop will probably be our next position we review from 2023, and we'll talk about that. And whoever doesn't win that job, essentially is the backup and is Jose's depth. And that's what we saw. Jose Tena got a couple games there last year. That was Jose Tena's debut. He came in and played third base for Jose Ramírez.
Yeah,
the night that Jose Ramírez knocked out Tim Anderson. So great debut there. You know what? That's enough for me. Jose Tena's the backup, just based on the fact that he replaced Jose Ramírez the night that Jose Ramírez became the knockout king in the AL Central.
Has Tim Anderson been signed yet by anyone?
He has not.
Cleveland could bring him in as a backup.
Yeah, send him to AAA. They don't have a third baseman in AAA. They have Daniel Schneemann and Reynel Delgado. So there you go. That could be
Reynel is a heck of a defender.
There is that.
I was a big fan of his when they drafted him. I won't lie, in his draft year, but he's another elite defender. We want to thank you all for being elite listeners. In the comments,
lively listeners, even.
Yes, lively. We Smokey Gator, big shout out, who told us that Alan Horn is now his insurance agent.
That's
I loved that fun bit of information. But thank you all for joining us. Make sure to rate and review, download daily. We will be back Friday unless something pops, but we will be around. Thank you, and go Guardians.